Hello everyone, we are Team JAMsesh, and today we'll be showcasing our project, Project Volantopia. My name is Abby.
Maria.
And my name is Jason.
And for today's schedule, we'll be going through the project brief of Volantopia, and then we'll be going into the research that we did, the design directions that we took, and the next steps of our project. So, our UX team did an extensive amount of research for this project. They have handed it off to us and provided us with resources that will help us create a gamified micro-volunteering application for the city of Chicago. Resources such as wireframes and user flows are very essential in us creating this application. However, the most important one are personas. We have to step into the shoes of Sarah Boulders, a community manager who is motivated in creating an impact in the community. Or Jessica Lane, a university student who's kind of skeptical of the traditional forms of volunteering. These are the people that we need to put our shoes on and kind of understand the user base. So with that being said, I'll hand it off to Maria to go through our research that we took on this part.
Thank you, Abby. Our team researched three domains: people of Chicago, micro-volunteering, and gamification. People of Chicago have a longer commute and longer work schedule in the nation, and it return caused a lack of growth in volunteering. Micro-volunteering describes a volunteer or team of volunteers completing small tasks that make up a larger project. Gamification is a process of integrating game elements in non-game app. The purpose of this is not to create a game, but to use game elements that positively influence users.
Thank you so much, Maria. So for our visual competitive analysis, we wanted to see what worked, what didn't work, so we can create the best possible version of Volantopia. So let's go ahead and start with what didn't work. Be my eyes. You can see the homepage here. While it's extremely clean, it's bland and empty. I have no reason to stay here. Number two, charity miles. The content cards here have no UI to house them, which makes them look unpolished as a consequence. Additionally, the nav here is unlabeled, adding unnecessary ambiguity. And for LB, a charity donation app, naturally, you want to swipe up and down, but this forces you to only swipe left and right, which feels restrictive, and that's something we don't want to do. Let's see what worked. The Apple Fitness app. Number one, this bold color scheme caught me from the beginning to end. Secondly, this icon here not only is extremely functional and informative, but it makes me want to fill up those icons, those cards, fill up those rings. So for this forest app here, it's extremely clean, and these screens are so explicitly clear in their purpose. And lastly, for GoFundMe, this dog illustration here adds a charm to an otherwise pretty bland page. And for this baby illustration at the bottom, the text here fully captures what exactly the photo is going for. The photo isn't obscured in any way whatsoever. So what are our takeaways? Number one, bold colors and design patterns. We noticed that the more bold the application was in design, the more likely we were to use it. Be informative. We want to eliminate all ambiguity. Users should know how to use the app the very first time. Intuitive browsing. Unlike our experience with LB, users should just be using the app, not fighting it. Multi-purpose icons. Like with Apple Fitness, icons should be beautiful, functional, and incentivize action. And lastly, enhanced content. Photos and videos should not be masked. UI elements should always enhance their intended effect, and we have no intentions of doing anything to the contrary. So here's Abby with his design principles.
All right, so for our design principles, we were able to produce three separate ones that our team needs to abide in terms of the direction that our application will be built upon. So the first one will be to delight users visually and functionally. That means not only does the aesthetic need to look pleasing, but the functionality needs to be clear, and that way users could be able to complete a task flow faster. At the same time, we gotta make sure that we unify users around a shared goal. Volantopia is a collective, not an individual-based thing. This small micro-volunteering task makes up for a larger portion of a bigger project. And lastly, we gotta make sure that users care about a cause. Making sure that explicit information that the task that they complete is beneficial not only to them, but also the community is one way that we could get people to get motivated into using the application. So in the end, our project, we were able to create mood boards, style tiles, high fidelity screens, and the prototype of our project. So for the direction that I took with mine is making sure that I create this mood of relaxation for the users to feel like they're at home and relaxed with the people with busy schedules. And at the same time, I want to make sure that for the second one, users could feel like a superhero, part of a comic book, a pop art style, to feel like the activities that they complete make a bigger influence in the community and impact it. And lastly, similar to the first one, I want to make sure that individuals will feel a little bit more relaxed again, but using more of a flat illustration style and a really neutral green color to make sure that people enjoy using the application even though they're busy. And in the end, it created these 3 separate style tiles. Each of them did a desirability testing. However, as a result of our testing, the third one was the one that our users really liked. It defined what our design principles are. The flat style and the really minimalistic view makes it more enjoyable for them to get a better understanding of how the application looks like. So in the end, from the style tiles, we were able to create a high fidelity one. This is the one that our users helped me influence in creating, and making sure that once they landed on the city page, they could go and search and browse for a civic button, and next thing, go into a civic task, finding a task that they want to complete, giving straight instructions of how to complete it, and prompting them to the place that and when and where they could complete the task. Hopefully, once everything is done, Modo will pop up showing them how to complete it. And once they know what the specification of the task is, they could click on it and press done, and a congratulatory screen should pop up. The next high fidelity prototype that we did was to add a friend. So they will be land back at the city page, where they would click on the friends icon at the bottom navigation and press the add friend button to lead them to the contact list. And from the contact list, they'll be they could invite their friends to kind of join this application, and they should be sent confirmation that it is done. So overall, we also did testing on this. And some of the things that our user testing told us, or at least for this particular prototype, was I need to add a little bit of visual element and fix some of the visual elements that's being presented, as some of them was not too clear and did not pop enough. At the same time, less reliance on a flat style, as some buttons were unclear for some users. Another thing is making sure there's a better instant gratification. People want to feel motivated, so we got to make sure that the people getting the congratulatory feels motivated from that. And at the same time, everybody needs to have this prototype needs to have a stronger sense of community for people to enjoy the app and keep doing it with their friends. And lastly, an improved user flow will help them easily navigate through the application easier. So now I'll hand it off to Maria with her process.
Thank you. Okay, here is my first mood board. Inspiration for this mood board was architecture and sharp elements, and how to make a virtual city. For the second one, I chose different bright colors and more illustration elements with less sharp elements. And third one, inspiration was how to make balance between red and black color and white space. Here is my style tile. For the first one, people mentioned that it's too bright and UI elements are not visible. For the second one, it's too white space and too flat. And style tile that people mentioned, it's that I'll go with that. Is the first style tile, and my inspiration was how to build a virtual city with realistic requirements. Here is my high fidelity screens. First task was to complete a civic task and interviewee browse category without problem, and they choose civic task, and next step was to choose map wheelchair accessibility, and everything flowed well. First issue was with map city, and they would like to see current location, and on this screen, last screen, they would like to see some reward system. Second task was to adding friend. All the tasks went flow. Flow was easy for them. They find friends and how to add friends, invite them, And only issue was with button, checkmark button. They wasn't sure is it for they already sent invitation or friend accept them, and that was a thing that I needed to fix that. And my interview takeaways, I need to, for my next step, I need to add more game elements, to change some colors and images, and fix some flow fix some screen flow on some screens. Okay, Jason.
Thank you so much, Maria. So for my version of Voluntopia, I wanted to fully realize the potential of the city building feature and its relevance to real-world volunteering. So let's go ahead and start with my first one. I wanted something with extreme vibrance, extreme playfulness with flat and simple illustrations. For my second one, the isometric iconography was a little more complex, so I muted the vibrancy a tad. And for my third one, I went for the exact same idea as the first, but with the outlined illustration made for a completely different feel. So let's go ahead and see the style tiles. So for my first one, people said it was far too vibrant. The second one, illustrations were too complex. They didn't like the isometric illustration style. And for my last one, I got almost the exact same feedback as the first. And let's go ahead and see what that feedback was. Number one, the illustrations were perfect. They thought they added a lot of charm. But the primary factor was that these cards rooted the app back into reality, which is very important for them. But ultimately, it was this, the flat and colorful style tile, that people resonated with the most and scored the best during the user interviews. So that style tile became this prototype. On the left, you can see us browsing the entire homepage, the city tab, and on the right, you see a still of the city. People thought that buttons looked too much like illustrations, and it was difficult to understand everything that was going on, which was an issue. So let's go ahead and enter the Civic Hub. This is the hub, and this would be a task card. People didn't know what exactly the hub was. How do I interact with it? Can you interact with it, or is it just an illustration? But for the task cards, people unanimously enjoyed it. It was informative. The progress bar told me that I wanted to complete that goal, and the icons on the top left were cute as well. So let's go ahead and complete the flow. This is a task page. You enter the wheelchair accessibility page, you read the instructions, you tap Start Helping. You're brought to a task map, you select a location pin, a modal pops up, you select the relevant choice, and then you're thanked because you did this community a phenomenal service. So let's go ahead and see what people had to say. Number one, instructions were far too long. I'm volunteering, I'm not going to read. I just want to do good deeds. I can't click on these radios, which is a problem. We shouldn't be suggesting that. And lastly, what if I want to keep volunteering? Do I have to go back and repeat this whole process? It's limited in its UX flow. So let's go ahead and see our next task, to ask a friend, to add a friend. So we click the Add Friend button, you're brought to the Invite Friends page where you can invite your friends. And on the very right, you can see us swiping right to this Activity tab. So let's see what people had to say about that. Number one, they were big fans of the avatars, but most importantly, what can you even do with your friends? There's nothing here that suggests additional activity. Can I just message them? Can I visit their towns? That should be explicitly obvious from this page. So these were my other category pages, and let's see what people had to say about that. Number one, people, they knew from the get-go that you could interact with them because of the hovering badges, whereas the city objects don't look interactive at all. What were my takeaways from all this? Number one, illustrations and buttons look far too similar. These are two completely different elements that serve completely different purposes. Number two, more interactivity with friends. Our second design principle is to unify users around a common goal. And in order for us to do that, we need to include interactivity. We need to get people to care about each other. Number three, visually suggest interactivity. We mentioned the badges above the head. We should have the same kind of effect for the city objects. People should be able to tap on a giraffe. Number four, address wireframe deficiencies. The wireframe served as a great foundation, but there are clear weaknesses that we're going to have to iron out. Number five, make the world matter to users. This hub world is the DNA of this app, and it's the very first app that users see. It's my job to make it more concise, more digestible, and a more pleasant experience to navigate. So what are our team takeaways and what are our next steps? Number one, we need to add some onboarding in order to inform users exactly what the app is. Number 2, add micro interactions in order to delight our users and make sure the package is cohesive. Number 3, address many of the wireframe deficiencies that the users expressed. And lastly, to finally prototype and test the execution of those tasks mentioned above. We want to see whether we were effective and successful in executing these things. The style guides serve as design language systems for you, the client, to see exactly what we're working with. And if you want access to anything, it's right there. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions?
All right. I'm gonna ask start here. We have for a friend to exit the building. Bye.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, man.
Good job, guys. Bye.
Bye.